Hello, good day. I was going through a box, which is quite normal for me, and I came upon two interesting things: a Commodore joystick and a set of Commodore paddles. The Commodore joystick, well, it worked, sort of. But in terms of, like, for serious people who wanted to play games, it really wasn't great. As you can see, it's kind of got a short little stick, and the fire button is only here. It's not here. I don't know. You know what? They made them. I'm sure they sold lots of them, but I'm sure that shortly after people bought them, they probably went and got something else, such as a Wico, which, maybe I can set that back here a little bit. Wico made good joysticks. They had a button on the top, they had a button on the bottom, there was a switch, you could pick which one. They had a longer stick, they had, I don't know, a better feel, a better everything. They just were. Just dandy. Anyway, paddles, on the other hand, they were all pretty much the same. I never remember finding, I know there are other people that made paddles, but I never remember, anybody coming out and saying, "Oh, these are the best paddles, my God, you gotta use those, they're just the best. The Commodore paddles were as good as anybody else's, and of course now, looking back, now that they're sitting here, they look nice with a Commodore logo on them. So, I suspect some of you may have seen that I have played, on occasion, Omega Race. And I always say, oh, it's better with the paddles, better with the paddles, better with the paddles. Well, I'm hoping to prove that. And that I'm going to, firstly, I'm going to undo the wires. I don't know why, but people like to use these bread tie things. But mind you, the bread ties are better than tape, because tape can leave a sticky, awful residue. So, the joystick is now, well, the cable, after being probably folded up like that for 20 or more years, is a little stiff, but these things happen. The paddles, on the other hand, oh look, it is also tied up with a twist tie. I preferred rubber bands, but actually, rubber bands, they can deteriorate, and then they can also leave a residue, so I guess these things are not terrible. Let's see if we can get this off. Alright, so the paddles, if you see, have there are two paddles, one connector. That's all. So, like on a Vic-20, which only has one joystick port, if you're using paddles, two of you, and if the game is supportive of paddles, can play. And I suppose on a Commodore 64, if the game was supportive of paddles and allows four people to play, can play. I do remember one time there was this little model car racing event, and the way that they kept score was, there were all these people, with Commodore 64 of course, there were all these people who had these little, they weren't joysticks, they were just, well, kind of like the handle from a joystick with a button. And what the person had done, because there was usually 8 cars or more racing, is they had split all the different joystick inputs up into individual buttons so that individual people could sit there, watch individual cars, and press the button when they crossed the line for each lap. So this made sure that, well, they knew who was first, and they could keep track of lap times and all kinds of things. It was quite ingenious. Anyway, so here we have a Commodore joystick, which is basically, well, crap, and paddles. I have, if you remember, I do have another Commodore joystick. Oh, excuse me. I just dropped, the alcohol I used to clean keyboards, but no harm done. It's all good. Anyway, I have had in the past and used and showed another Commodore joystick. And indeed, it is right here. Oh, is it plugged in? No, it is not plugged in. Anyway, so I do have a pair. Both, it's funny, both of them, the shiny Commodore name seems to have worn off. Both of these could use a little treatment from, yes, a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. So what I'm going to do, now that I've got these undone, is I'm going to get the Vic-20, and I think I'm going to turn out the lights and set up my iPhone to record the screen, because this camera that I'm using here, the screen always looks terrible. By the way, the thing about paddles, which is different, is, as in case you don't know, is you turn them. It is not just left, right, up, down, and all the in-betweens. So on a Mega Race, you can gently get where you want to be, whereas on the joystick, I find it's rather finicky to get the ship pointed just the way you want it. And of course, you have a fire button. Now, the other thing, of course, is, wait for it. Oh, maybe not that one. There's a rattling noise in here. Now, am I going to open it up right now? No, I am not. I'm going to test them first, and then I'll probably open it up and see what's what. So, I'm going to get the Vic-20 set up, and then we'll see how the paddles perform versus the joystick on a Mega Race on the ever-popular Vic-20. So, stay tuned. The next episode will be a Mega Race and the battle of the joystick versus the paddles. Thank you for coming. Bye for now.